Hello, everyone. This is Cruz for the Intense Apex Alpha Male blog, podcast, and website. And for today's video, I would like to share with you an interview that took place about 20 years ago with world-class champion bodybuilder Lee Labrada. And this is when Lee Labrada was in the cusp or at the peak of his competitive career and was about to retire. This took place between 94 and 95. And I would like to share this interview with you so that you can see a lot of what's taught in the sport of bodybuilding and fitness and getting in shape and everything has not changed much. And Labrada has a great company, Labrada Nutrition, and he is still in fantastic and great shape. And he espouses a lot of great information in this interview that he did about 20 years ago. And I hope you enjoy it. Give it a thumbs up and please subscribe if you like it. I'll bring more content like that for you. And please leave your comments below. And let me know what you think about the world-class champions who were competing 20 years ago as opposed to the world-class champions we see competing today. And I usually do respond to your comments. So please leave all the nice comments and we can collaborate together. Enjoy the interview. Thanks a lot. God bless you. Okay, once again, please remember to subscribe to my channel. Click the little bell so you can get the notifications and like and share. Thank
That I'm retiring, but that is not the case. Basically, I'm taking a year from competition in order to concentrate on building up my body, refining the muscularity and such, and gaining the extra pounds that I need to compete against these monsters. When you're dieting all the time, it's hard to do that.
Now you're putting on size. Is it working?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's definitely working. I started by taking off about 4 months, not training at all, and that's the first time that I've done that. In over 16 years. From the very first that I started, I've been very consistent, and the body really appreciated that. Although I did lose some lean muscle tissue, I gained it right back. I mean, just within a matter of weeks after resuming training, and the gains are coming fast and furious.
Now, what do you look like now? Would you consider yourself, a little fat or what?
No, definitely not fat. Fat's an ugly word around my house. No, we always keep our body fat very, very low. I think I got as high as about 5.5–6% body fat here, which is extremely high for me. As most of the readers know, I keep my body fat very low, and in competition, I even go below 3%. But that was at the onset of training after that layoff, and now it's quite a bit lower. I've gained quite a few pounds of lean muscle tissue back, and I am just rolling right along here.
Okay, but your proportions, are traditionally, great. So, are you concerned about, ruining your proportions by putting on?
No, I'm not, because basically I put proportion first. I will look at the mirror. I will determine where I need to gain that extra muscle. I will not gain huge muscle mass at the expense of the symmetry and proportion as such. I'm working mainly just on thickness in certain areas, like my back and some things like that.
Now, what about if you have this Muscle Media 2000 Metrics Cruz coming up in September to October?
I wouldn't miss that thing for the world.
Yeah, but I mean, people have
We had a good time last year.
Yeah, it was great. It was fun. But I'm just curious, you've taken this time off, and is there any pressure on your part to look a certain way for the Cruz?
I'll tell you what, TC, right now I look as good or better than I did on the cruise last year, so there's no pressure whatsoever. My body has just responded in tremendous fashion. I just got back from Mexico. I did an exhibition down there. Everybody went crazy, so things are just hopping right along.
So you're not doing anything really different. You're just taking time off from the constant dieting.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't take time off from the dieting. Matter of fact, I just took time off from training, and I kept my diet real good. I, stayed on my metrics. I stayed with plenty of complex carbohydrates, and really stayed away from the junk. Of course, I was eating less because I wasn't burning a lot of calories off. But I stayed with my diet. I'm still on a very good, clean diet. Training heavy and gaining a lot of muscle mass.
But was that mentally tough to take time off after that many years?
Was it tough to?
Mentally?
Not really. I think that I was ready for it, actually. I've kind of run the full gamut, and just matured quite a bit, and it was something that I was ready for. It was planned. Had I been forced to take a layoff, say, if I was injured or something, it might be different, but it was definitely something that I had planned. It was not against my will. It was something that fit in with the long-term view that I take on everything.
Well, most bodybuilders have a fear of smallness. I mean, would you wake up saying, "Oh no, Jesus, I'm shrinking"?
Isn't that funny? There's a good psychiatrist friend of mine that has referred to bodybuilders as reverse anorexics.
Yeah, really.
Arthur Jones refers to us as little boys in monkey suits. I think there's definitely a psychiatric angle there somewhere, and I haven't figured it out yet, but when I do, I'll let you know. No, actually, it doesn't mess with my head at all. It might have a few years ago at the onset when I first started training, that type of thing. I guess all of us start out, wanting to gain huge muscle mass and such. But over the years, I've developed a real strong self-image and feel real good about myself. And I don't have to be wearing 100 pounds of extra muscle to feel good. I feel the same size.
Gotcha. Okay. Hey, except for winning Olympia, you've practically done everything there is to do in bodybuilding. I mean, do you ever say to yourself, is that all there is, or what else can I get out of this sport? Or
well, I've looked at it as a path. In other words, bodybuilding is a path. It's not a destination. In other words, it's not like one day I magically win the Olympia and I've accomplished everything and I quit. I think it's the path that makes the champions. All of the wins, all of the losses combined, all of the personal battles that I've encountered in the gym, and this is something that all of the readers out there, all of the listeners go through on a day-to-day basis. Bodybuilding is a one-on-one with yourself. You go into the gym, you conquer your body, you get better, and that's what it's all about. I still get a tremendous amount of satisfaction from it.
You're much too emotionally mature for this sport, I tell you that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm a good cut-up at times.
Okay. Hey, well, just out of curiosity, what was your first contest?
My first contest was the Teenage Mr. Jacksonville, Florida, which was an old AAU contest. That's all there was back then before the NPC, and I did that show, and it's funny that you bring that up because I was thinking about that the other day. I must have weighed all of about 130 pounds when I entered that show, and I remember showing up the day of that show, and I was the smallest guy on stage, and I thought back then that bodybuilding was just about being the biggest guy on stage, so I thought I was going to get wiped out, and imagine my surprise when the results came back that evening and I had won. And that taught me a very important lesson right up front, and that is that bodybuilding is a lot more than just about being the biggest guy out there.
Well, let me ask you this: if you weighed 130, what did you weigh before you started working out?
Well, actually, I weighed about the same. What happened was I metamorphed. In other words, I dropped the baby fat that I had on me, and gained a tremendous amount of muscularity. That was at the beginning. I've always been real lean, real muscular. Gaining weight has been a problem for me. But everything has really worked out. The emphasis on the detail, that is what's brought me this far. Emphasis on being the most ripped guy, emphasis on keeping my symmetry and proportion as I develop the muscle, just kind of an eye towards the whole picture.
Okay, well, that leads perfectly into my next question. But the rest of society seems to be downsizing during the 90s. Cars are getting smaller, payrolls are getting smaller. Do you think that bodybuilders will start getting smaller and paying more attention to the quality of muscle rather than size?
So. Right now, the trend is definitely on the upsizing. You're seeing more and more large guys hitting the stage these days. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that as long as they don't lose perspective of what bodybuilding is all about. The person that wins a bodybuilding contest should have the best developed body, not the guy with the hugest legs or the hugest back, or the freakiest mass. It should be the guy that has it all together. In other words, has a perfectly developed physique. We mustn't lose sight of that.
Okay. Given that attention to aesthetics and things, is bodybuilding a sport?
That's a good question, TC. That's a good question. I have always argued that it is a sport, and I have always challenged anybody that didn't think it was a sport to try to follow me through several weeks of pre-contest training and then go through the grueling prejudgings that we do for these professional shows. So there's definitely an athletic element involved. However, as in some other sports, such as diving or figure skating or something like that, what we present on the stage that day is actually a presentation. It is not the actual athletic portion of the whole thing.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Okay, hey, training. Mike Mentzer's gotten an awful lot of press lately. He periodically resurfaces every few years, and his stuff seems to make a lot of sense. Do you agree with Mike's that one-set theory?
I really respect the hell out of Mike. He was one of my early influences and probably the biggest idol that I had growing up. Just for the mere fact that he was a scientific bodybuilder, I liked the fact that he thought everything through. It wasn't just like, hey kid, do 3 sets of squats and do 3 sets of leg presses and your legs will get big. He would go into why it works, and that always appealed to me. I've got an engineering background, and so I like to know why things work and how things work. So Mike's theories always appealed to me. I think that Mike's theories have a lot of validity. I have taken a lot out of Mike's thinking, and I have applied it to my own training very successfully.
Okay, so you do use elements of it now?
Excuse me, what's that?
You use elements of Mentzer's training in your current training?
No, I don't use the one set to failure type of approach to training. But I am a big believer in that you have to take a muscle to the point of failure, and through a succession of sets to keep fatiguing the muscle more and more until it hits a threshold where you have enough stimulus to make the muscle grow, to make it do something.
Okay, so why don't you explain a little bit more then how you take your muscle to failure?
Well, basically, I approach it from this angle. After a thorough warm-up, what I try to do is get up to the heaviest training weight possible. And with that weight, I'll do as many reps as I can and fatigue the muscle as fast as possible. And then I'll take a rest in between the sets. The rest will be anywhere from just long enough to catch my breath to up to 2 minutes sometimes, depending on the objective, whether I'm trying to build size and strength or whether I'm just trying to get muscular for a show. And then bringing all of that together, do a total of about 8 to 10 sets per body part, and try to limit myself to 20 to 30 minutes of training per body part. I think that's a good rule of thumb. It's not really the number of sets that you do, it's the total amount of work. And you should limit yourself by time. In other words, take 20 or 30 minutes per body part, but no more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, for someone who's been training as long as you have, how do you prevent from getting stagnant? I mean, do you switch routines constantly or exercises?
No, actually, I don't switch routines constantly. The way that I keep from getting stagnant is I try to keep myself from overtraining, number one. Because once you have overtrained, you lose your appetite for training, both mentally and physically. So what I do is I structure my routine so that it has plenty of rest time. You see, right now I'm doing like a 2-on, 1-off type of routine. I'll train for 2 days, and I take a day of rest. If I need an extra day of rest, if I feel like I need it, I'll take it. I'm not afraid to rest, but when I do get in the gym, I train very, very seriously. I train very heavy, I train very hard, I train to failure, and I train in a short amount of time as possible, and then I get out. So everything stays fresh. I don't change the routines around a lot. I do change the rep schemes. I do change the intensity levels depending on the time of year, and as such, I give my body periods where there's very intense training, other times where there's a little bit more of active rest, as I call it.
How about somebody at your level? Are you still getting sore all the time?
Not all the time. There are workouts where I get extremely sore, other workouts where I don't. I don't think that it's necessary to get extremely sore each and every workout. However, I do think that soreness is a good sign that you have, created enough of a disturbance, enough damage to the muscle cells that you're getting a response. As Dr. Connolly goes into in some of his articles, when you do exercises, and particularly in the eccentric or lowering phase of an exercise, damage actually does occur to the cell walls. And this damage, in turn, releases messengers that excite the satellite cells, which in turn get activated and enlarge and, add extra muscle growth.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're still, even at your level of development, you're still making progress all the time, huh?
I feel that I am. I do make progress, and I do keep a log of the weights that I use and all of the training, and I can see a steady progression. It's always like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You can't get stronger each and every workout, but you can see over a period of time, you can see the steady climb up in the weights that I use, and that translates to bigger muscle.
Okay. If you were 16 years old right now, you were starting all over again, but you knew what you knew now, what would you do differently?
Not a whole hell of a lot. I'm very happy with the way that my life has turned out, and I think that I would have avoided some of the mistakes that I made at the onset. Some of the misconceptions that we had about training back then, that you needed to train 6 days a week, that you needed to do 20 sets of body part, that you needed to eat a lot of protein and fat, the steaks and the eggs, and all this crazy stuff that we used to do back then, the low carbohydrate diets. I could have avoided some of that, but you know what, TC? I started out with a lot of the Mentor philosophy right from the very start, at a time when it was extremely unpopular, doing 5 and 6 sets per body part, and I did that from the very beginning, and I had great results.
Terrific. How about things like cross-training? You ever do any cross-training, running and bicycling, things like that?
I do that more in the off-season, and at times when I'm trying to wind down, like after a competition. A lot of times you experience a little burnout, both mental and physical burnout, so I'll take a few days off, and then I'll when I ease back into it, I'll do exercising like, riding the bike, running, swimming, anything that really catches my fancy that's physical, in order to just kind of mix things up and allow my mind and my body to unwind.
Okay. How much attention do you pay to cardiovascular work in general? I mean,
I think that's very important to incorporate some. We used to have this long-standing joke, about people that did aerobics. Back when I first started, the aerobic exercise of choice was running, jogging, and we used to say, yeah, run an inch off your arms. Basically meaning if you do cardiovascular exercise, you're going to get small.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up with that mentality, but I feel that it's totally wrong. I think that any exercise taken to excess, can hinder your muscular gains. But I think that a little aerobic exercise, a little cardiovascular exercise, 3, maybe 4 times a week, 20 to 30 minutes, that can do nothing but help you, because it builds lung capacity, builds heart capacity, helps to move toxins out of the muscle instead of just letting them sit there, so it helps recovery. I think it's a good thing.
Okay. Let's say hypothetically you woke up one morning and you were 100 pounds overweight. How would you lose weight? How would you go about it, doing it in a rational, realistic
Staple
manner?
my mouth and handcuff myself to a treadmill.
No, really.
In all seriousness, if I found myself 100 pounds overweight, if I was a very overweight person, first of all, I go to the doctor and get a good general checkup, get some blood work done to see if my thyroid was normal. If my thyroid was normal, then, basically it puts you into the normal category, in which exercise and diet, a combination of weight training, some cardiovascular training, and a low-fat diet over a long period of time will take those unwanted pounds off. And you just got to have discipline. If you have a normal thyroid and you're extremely overweight, it's just a matter of discipline. Either you have it or you don't. And if you get that discipline and you get it in your head that you want to look good, then you can do it.
Okay. So do you think it's very common for people to have a thyroid problem? I hear that all the time. It's my thyroid.
Well, I think that I think that the majority of us, 80-90% of us, have a normal thyroid. Now, it can be a little bit on the lower end, a little bit on the higher end, but we tend to have a normal thyroid. I think that there are some people that legitimately have thyroid or metabolic problems, and those people need to diagnose that before they get into a diet, because the diet will not work in that case. Diet and exercise regimen, but the majority of us will respond to diet and exercise. And I think that a lot of what you're hearing are just people making excuses, for not looking better, not getting off their can, and doing something about it.
Okay. Speaking of excuses, I also hear people saying, well, I'm in my 30s now, and gee, I can't lift as much weight anymore. I got to slow down my rate of progress.
Say when they're 60. I mean, geez, 30, that's young these days. I mean, people are living well into their 70s. It used to be 150 years ago, men would die when they're 30 years old. That was the average lifespan. Now it's like, 75, 77? You're just beginning to live when you're 30. And they have done studies, as you well know, with people of advanced age that have shown that muscular hypertrophy, muscular growth can occur even at advanced age. So I don't think that's an excuse. I think that you need to get into the gym. What do you think?
I agree with you. I agree with you. Being in my 30s myself. What have you noticed any changes at all?
As far as
the alleged aging process, taking place.
I've gotten a hell of a lot better looking.
I don't know about that.
But no, actually, I feel that my muscle has matured. I feel that I've gotten a lot larger in terms of muscle mass. I feel that perhaps I recover a little slower than I did when I was 18 years old, but not by a whole heck of a lot. And I'll tell you what, my metabolism has not slowed down either. I can still eat the ass end off a horse.
Okay. Hey, what's a realistic amount of muscle a natural weight trainer can hope to achieve in a year? What do you think?
I think that at the onset of weight training, a person can expect 5 to 10 pounds of lean muscle mass if they're doing everything perfectly. I mean, if they're eating their 6 meals a day, if they're getting adequate amounts of protein, carbohydrates, minerals, if they're training hard enough but not overtraining. In other words, with perfect conditions, I would say 5 to 10 pounds of lean muscle mass in 1 year. That, again, with time will diminish. Law of diminishing returns applies here. After 2, 3, 4 years, you're only going to start seeing about 5 pounds of muscle a year.
Okay. How about conversely, what is a realistic amount of muscle a steroid-using weight trainer could gain in a year?
Well, again, I think that that's just going to depend on individual to individual. I've seen guys that just naturally, get huge, just huge, and it's because genetically they have a propensity to gaining muscle mass. Then I've seen guys that, can't gain muscle mass to save their life, and that have taken huge amounts of steroids with very little success. So I think a lot of it, depends on genetics, also how well you eat, how well disciplined you are with the, with the diet and the exercise. If you give the anabolic steroids to an individual that is, genetically gifted, also, I mean, yeah, they will see faster results. I don't know how much greater results in the long run. I think that the anabolic steroid advantage is that you might get it faster. But there's a price to be paid for that, as you and I both know. I mean, the price is your health.
How is it among professional bodybuilders nowadays? Is steroid use discussed openly, or do people exchange protocols? Or
oddly enough, the professional athletes do not discuss steroids amongst themselves. It's almost like something like, well, this is my secret, this is what I do, and I think an amateur or a friend has a better chance of finding out what Joe Pro does than I do. It's almost like trade secrets or something like that. But, I've been in this sport forever. I really don't think that it matters that much. There are guys out there taking huge amounts of anabolics, but the thing is this, a receptor is a receptor. Once a receptor is filled, it cannot take an additional hormone. In other words, I think that there's such a thing as overkill. Once the body is saturated with an anabolic steroid, it cannot take more. So taking more is just not going to be that much more effective. It just breeds a whole hell of a lot more problems. Health problems and such, having all of the toxic stuff floating around in your system.
Do you think it's possible that some people are genetically gifted steroid receptors by having an increased number of receptors?
I think it's possible to have anything. Genetically gifted, and I'll tell you why. Stop and look at the most obvious, okay? The physical characteristics and the differences in physical characteristics amongst all of us. TC, you have blonde hair. I have brown hair. I'm shorter than you are, okay? You're taller than I am, okay? It takes somebody like, Michael Jordan. The guy is well over 6.5 feet, correct?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that I can do that here at 5'6" that's ever going to make me 6.5 feet tall. In the same way, I think there are people that are genetically gifted to gaining more muscle than other people. However, I also believe that anybody can improve. So no matter whether you are genetically gifted or not for bodybuilding, you're going to improve. So that's the main thing. But coming back to your question about the receptors, yeah, there may be people that have great receptors. It may be those people that are genetically gifted like that for muscular gains. Also, it's very possible that people have a superior GI tract. In other words, a superior digestive system that allows them to absorb more nutrients or more effectively than others.
That's interesting. I never thought about that. That's good. Okay. Excuse me if I hop around a little bit.
That's okay.
Sometimes I'm a little scatterbrained here. How many calories do you think a person should eat if they want to gain muscle but keep their fat gains down to a minimum? Or should they even pay any attention to calories?
Oh, I think they should. The way that I would suggest to do it would be to write down everything that goes in your mouth every day for 1 week. End of the week, whip out that calorie book. Figure out how many calories on the average you consume per day. Take that as your baseline. Okay, and I think that if you increase that about 10%, it should supply enough calories to gain that muscular weight that you want without getting fat. Now, that is assuming that you are consuming sufficient protein. Okay, and sufficient protein for me means at least 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And as you well know, Doc Connolly right now is advocating up to 3 to 4 grams per pound of body weight.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't tried that yet, but the research seems to be leaning in that direction.
Are you going to try it?
I think so. I think I'm going to give that a shot. I don't know that I'll be able to consume that much, or that I would recommend it for the average person. I would say the athlete that is training under extreme duress, under a lot of stress, heavy intensity type training, would be able to tolerate the higher protein amounts as long as he was consuming enough water. But it remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of these mega-calorie diets that a lot of trainers are advocating?
Oh, I definitely think that they're wrong. I think they're definitely off base. It's been proven that the high calories does not drive muscle growth. It's nutrients that drives muscle growth. It's the training stimulus. In other words, training with heavy weights that drives the muscle growth. It's not the huge amounts of calories. I think that you need actually very little calories over maintenance for growth. I think as little as 10%.
Oh man, okay. Hey, what's the strangest thing you ever did to prepare for a contest?
The strangest thing that I ever did to prepare for a contest.
I always hear some of these wild things.
There was 1 year where I had read some research on this amino acid L-carnitine.
Mm-hmm.
They were saying that it was the body's carburetor. The substance that influenced the amount of fat that was burned in the mitochondria. I forget the exact logic on this.
That sounds right. Yeah.
I started taking these huge amounts of L-carnitine, and I ended up smelling like a fish. It was horrible. And you know what? Ironically enough, I did not lose any more body fat than I would have just on my regular regimen. So I think that there's a lot of hocus pocus out there these days.
You smelled like a fish, huh?
Yeah, boy, I'll tell you what.
Were the people on stage standing a little bit further away from you?
I'll tell you what, as soon as I caught whiff of it, that was about the end of the L-carnitine.
What's the strangest thing you saw somebody else do to prepare for a contest?
The strangest thing that I have seen in preparation for a contest has to be this high-fat diet that the WBF athletes were touting a few years ago. It just flies in the face of common logic. In other words, consuming high amounts of fat and very, very low amounts of carbohydrates while on a contest diet. It cannot do anything but make you fat. And there was just no logic in that. That was probably the strangest thing.
What's it like competing in a pro contest? What goes on behind the scenes? Are contestants generally friendly, or are you guys gossip about?
Contestants are generally cordial. I don't experience, any of the intimidation tactics or any of that kind of stuff that you would think would occur at competitions. Everybody likes their space. Everybody kind of keeps to themselves and focuses on winning the show. The backbiting does not occur until after the show, when you got a lot of pissed off people. I guess everybody's pissed off except the winner, and then they start running their mouths, but generally speaking, everybody gets along real well.
Do guys ever gossip about other stars or anything like that? Or?
No, I really have not encountered that at shows themselves, or perhaps they know that I'm not the type of person that likes to gossip and don't include me in it, but I really haven't encountered anything, but friendly people for the most part at these shows.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, though. Let me say one thing. You had mentioned what's it like to compete in a pro show, and I'd like to say this for the benefit of the listeners out there. If any of y'all have ever entered a bodybuilding competition and you have felt the rush of adrenaline as you compete, that is exactly what I feel on that stage, no more, no less. Because as you go up in levels, it's all relative. You're feeling the same thing, entering Mr. Syracuse, New York, or, Mr. Podunk, Iowa, that I'm feeling there on the Mr. Olympia stage. There's just a few more cameras going off.
Really? You still feel that way?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I still get that adrenaline rush just as I did when I was a beginner.
Huh. Is there anything else in your life that is giving you that same feeling?
I'll tell you what, the biggest rush that I've ever gotten is with the birth of my son, Hunter.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and that has definitely been the greatest thing that's ever happened.
Good. How's he doing?
Oh, he's doing fantastic. He's turning 2 this week, and we're gearing up to have a big party for him here. I got a new spread right outside of Houston, Texas. It's a 4-acre country estate, and we're just fixing it all up. He's going to have all of his little buddies over, and boy, I'll tell you what, he's just a happy kid.
Are you indulgent parents?
Yeah, I would say so. I definitely, believe in, in loving children, but with discipline, and teaching them right from wrong. I think there is such a thing as indulging them too much.
Okay, here's a scenario. Hunter's 17, comes up to you, you're in your easy chair reading your paper. He says, "Dad, I don't want to go to college. I want to be a pro bodybuilder just like you."
Well, I want the kid to be happy. But I will tell him, hey, Hunter, you know what? You can do both at the same time. Look at me. Basically, when I was going to college, I was training in my off hours. In fact, I managed to win the Mr. Texas, the Mr. Gulf Coast, the collegiate Mr. Texas, Mr. Southwest, a number of titles while I was in college. And the year after I got out of college, I won the nationals. So it is possible to study and train at the same time. And the thing is this, Hunter, you have got to have a safety net. You've got to have something to fall back on, because pro bodybuilding is a long shot, just like pro football, just like pro basketball, like any other professional sport. You cannot put all your eggs in one basket. You got to strengthen that mind at the same time you strengthen your body, because long after that body's gone, your mind's going to be there.
All right. Can I have the keys to the BMW then?
Keys to BMW. I don't think so.
Okay. All right. What's the one thing bodybuilders can do to just look better overall without necessarily putting on, extra additional pounds of muscle?
I think just maintaining their fat level in check. 2 things. I would say, if you wanted me to generalize that question, I would say bring your body fat level down to below 10%, to an acceptable amount of body fat so that you look good, you can see the muscle underneath. That's one. And then number 2, maintain some kind of good skin tone. In other words, make sure that your skin's not broke out, make sure that you tan regular so that you appear healthy. Those are the 2 things I would say.
Okay. Speaking of tanning, this is something I've always wondered about. Whenever I see you, obviously you have a great tan and everything. And do you ever worry about the long-term consequences of that, or is that just when, for public appearances that you look that way?
No, I really don't worry about the long-term consequences. I come from a family whose melanin content, we're all olive-skinned, so we take well to the sun. And then again, I do not abuse my skin. I always keep it moisturized. I don't let the skin burn. I usually cover areas like my face and things like that. I really don't worry about the long-term consequences right now. I would if I had to work out in the sun all the time, or if my skin was constantly burning, or if I was fair-skinned.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, here's something. If you were put in charge of organizing a bodybuilding council of the greatest bodybuilding minds that ever lived, who would be on your panel?
Of the greatest bodybuilding
minds.
Minds?
Yeah, not bodies, minds.
I don't think there's too many of those. No, I'm being facetious. Who are the most intelligent bodybuilders? Can that be rephrased that way, pretty much?
Sure, if you like, sure.
I would have to say Frank Zane. I would have to say Bill Pearl. I would have to say Larry Scott. Boyer Coe's another very level-headed person. And gosh, I really don't mean to insult anybody if I've left you out. There are a number of very intelligent bodybuilders that I know. Arnold, of course, is one. So I would think it would be a lot of these people.
How about things like just nutritionists and things, and then general trainers? Anybody like that?
General trainers?
Yeah, people are trainers. Like there's somebody like Perillo or something is not a bodybuilder per se, but he's a trainer, I guess.
Yeah.
Or Mauro Di Pasquale, I guess, would be a trainer in a sense.
Follow that many of the so-called trainers, although I think that there is a great number of them out there. Doc Connolly is one of them. Probably one of the most brilliant minds I've ever met in the field of nutrition. Joe Weider. Everybody throws stones at the guy, but the guy sure knows a whole hell of a lot about bodybuilding because he's brought it this far.
Okay.
And there are, I would say, pro bodybuilders, old-time bodybuilders in general are probably the best trainers.
All right, that's interesting because why is that?
I think experience. You can go to college, you can get yourself a degree in exercise physiology, but practical, everyday knowledge, knowing what works and what doesn't, counts for a whole heck of a lot. I am college trained myself, but I can honestly tell you that theory and practical application are two different things.
Okay. So you mentioned Dr. Connolly. Do you really consult him as to what nutritional path you should follow?
Oh, you better believe it. Yeah, you better believe it. The guy's like a walking medical encyclopedia, and he's been the source of all of my nutritional knowledge here in the past few years.
Now, was it difficult for you to accept his advice at the beginning?
Let me embellish that a little bit,
okay.
Because I believe in giving credit where credit is due. I have also worked hand in hand with our very own Keith Klein. You've probably seen some of his articles in Muscle Media 2000.
Sure, I interviewed Keith Klein for the last tape.
Yeah, oh, exactly. And Keith is brilliant, and Keith is responsible for the day-to-day monitoring of my diet before competitions. I've consulted with him on a tremendous number of things. So credit where credit's due. I would say that Keith is also one of the great information inputters in that area.
Now, sometimes I know Keith's theories and Dr. Connolly's theories conflict.
Yes.
What do you do?
What do you do? Well, I think that it's allowable to have different theories. There's an old saying down here in Texas, and that is that there's more than one way to skin a cat. And as such, I respect both individuals, and I just look to see what works for me. I try both things, and I'm impartial. I'll try both things if they differ on something, and I'll make up my own mind.
Okay, good. Now, we all know you use metrics.
Oh, yeah.
But if it didn't exist, what would you use?
Oh, boy. That's a good question. I think that I would probably be doing what I was doing for years and years before that, which is, just eating 6 good meals a day, plenty of complex carbohydrates, plenty of proteins, and, just trying to keep my protein intake up as high as possible from a good source,
Okay. Convince me that you use Met-Rx even if you weren't paid to endorse it.
Well, I did before I was paid to endorse it. In other words, I was using the product beforehand, and I experienced such good results. First, when I first got hooked up with Bill and Scott, Bill Phillips and Scott Connolly, and the Met-Rx was the buzzword, so to speak. I approached this thing very impartially. I approached this thing from the standpoint, probably another product, whatever, I'll try it. Okay, so I started trying this stuff, and voila, I had great results. I told them I would try it for a month, and I had Keith Klein measure my body composition before and after 1 month of using this, and the results were really striking.
Terrific. How many do you take a day?
I, on the average, take 5 a day. Now, that's average, because there's some days that I'll take 6, 7 of them. But on the average, I can look you straight in the eye and say I've had 5 packets a day for the last 3 years.
Okay. Is it necessary for the average guy to take that many?
Well, I think that you can get the effect. In other words, the bulk of the effect from 2 to 3 packages. Anything less than that, and you're probably just not going to get the full effect of the product, because the timing of the intakes and the amount that you take is critical. But I think that good food plays a part too. I think that both combined is just even better.
Okay. Now, right now, things like creatine and vanadyl sulfate are very, very hot. Do you use anything like these, or?
To be honest with you, TC, I don't. I'm not that well versed in those things. I have a cursory knowledge of them, but I am not that well versed in those ergogenic aids. I've just seen so many come and go. Everything from from that good tasting motor oil that the promoter promotes. And MCT oil.
Yeah.
I've seen everything from that to the L-carnitine.
Yeah.
I've seen them come and go.
So when you first started out, did you pretty much go every month to a different supplement, trying it?
Well, you got to understand, when I first started, back in the 70s, there wasn't much but just proteins and vitamins and minerals.
Yeah.
And then amino acids came along, and then it seems that nowadays every newfangled supplement on God's green earth is coming out every month. But I think that good, solid, basic nutrition is where it's at. In other words, don't worry about the details until you have the large aspects of a diet taken care of.
Okay. And I get letters all the time from readers, and they have a list of 5 to 10 supplements. They're all taken at the same time.
Right.
What would you? They ask me, how could I? What's working for me, and what isn't? What should I take?
Well, see, if they can't even tell you, how can you tell them? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
My best input is this. Take a good, high quality protein supplement, good vitamin and mineral supplement. If you want to do 1 step better, I should say 100 steps better, take Met-Rx. That's all I take right now. It's just the Met-Rx. And if you want to start messing with with the details, the vanadyl sulfates, the creatine, and that type of thing, fine. Keep track of it, see how it affects your system. Use them one at a time. See if they work for you. And keep in mind that a lot of supplement manufacturers, they're going to pull out the latest whatever in order to make a buck. A lot of times the studies don't correlate with the actual effects of substance. Case in point, remember how everybody was talking about arginine a few years ago?
Sure.
You take arginine and it releases growth hormone and so forth and so on. Well, what the supplement manufacturers don't tell you is that arginine has to be introduced intravenously, in order to get the kind of levels in the blood that would be necessary to get a growth hormone release. So these are the kind of things that a lot of supplement manufacturers omit, when they're presenting their information. Case in point, colostrum. Total waste of money.
Okay. How much did you spend on supplements before you turned pro? Obviously you said you were buying the vitamins and things and the protein powders, amino acids. Were you spending a significant amount on these things? Or
I don't know. I guess at the onset I was probably spending $50 to $100 a month. Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah. It is a lot of money. I looked at it as an investment in my body. I would rather invest in my body, ingest good foods, good supplements, than say, buy a fancy shirt. I mean, what better use of your money than investing in your own body?
Sounds good. Hey, you mentioned growth hormone a minute ago in arginine. Do you think that's all hyped up? I mean, I get letters again all the time asking about, how can I potentiate or facilitate growth hormone release? I mean, should they even be worrying about things like that?
No, I think that the one thing that people can do that creates the most profound effect hormonally in the body is the training. Heavy, intense training. That combined with nutritional support is going to be the ticket.
Okay. What supplement out there? I'm going to put you on a limb here. What supplement out there, when you see advertisements for it, pisses you off the most?
What supplement out there?
Yeah, what pisses you off when you read it?
Set myself up for a Oh man. Well, but I'll tell you what. The ones that get me the most are the ones that manipulate the before and after pictures. I think that there's some supplement companies that you look at the models. I mean, they're pale, they're overlit in the before picture. They're purposely distending their stomach. They're wearing the bathing suits, in a way to accentuate the width of the hips or the waist. And then in the after picture, they're all tan. The lighting is great. Their posture is slightly changed. Their bathing suit is positioned a little bit better to accentuate the lines of the body.
Yeah.
And sure, there's some changes, but come on, in 30 days, no way.
Well,
That's insult my intelligence.
Muscle media
You cannot change your body like that in 30 days.
Okay. Muscle media and Metrics are getting a lot of flack for doing that sort of thing.
Well, Metrics has used before and after pictures, but take a look at them. I mean, they're not manipulated. They're not. There's no before and after touching up or anything. Any difference in lighting. And the results are not drastic. I mean, they're good results, and they may be drastic results, but it's over a period of time. We're not claiming 2 weeks, 30 days. I mean, that's ludicrous.
Okay, thank you. Is there any advice you could give our listeners that will save them some money? In other words, what shouldn't they waste their money on, or can you save them some wasted time for the benefit of your experience in general?
Well, to be honest with you, TC, I think that you can waste your money on these supplements that are the borderline supplements we talked about, the esoterics. In other words, the creatines, the OKGs, the colostrum, stuff like that. Hey, look. First of all, if you got that kind of money, fine, use it. But if you don't have that kind of money to waste on supplements, first of all, just get yourself a good basic diet. Eat 6 good meals a day. Lots of protein, lots of carbohydrate. That's the most basic thing. Get yourself a membership at a good gym. That's the 2 most basic things. You want a good supplement? Get yourself a good all-around supplement. Hey, I'm going to say Metrics because that's what I use. Hey, that's what I'm paid to endorse. But most of all, because I think it works. If you don't want to do that, then just vitamins and mineral supplement, along with just a lot of natural protein in your diet.
Sounds good. Hey, do you still read bodybuilding magazines ever, or are they old hat to you?
Oh no, I still read them. Again, it has to be an article that'll catch my eye. Usually I read all this T.C. Luma stuff. It has to be something that catches my eye. But I do flip through all of the bodybuilding magazines every month.
Okay.
Incidentally, they're a hell of a lot better than when I first started.
Yeah, they have improved. Let me ask you this. Has a reporter ever called you and asked you about how you train a certain body part and said, no, we have these pictures. This is how you train?
Yeah, that has happened to me before.
You don't seem like the kind of guy who would go along with that.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll give them the description of that particular exercise, but I'll tell them, look, I mean, that's fine and dandy, but this is what we do. And I have caught on to the fact that some people do that, and so I am very careful.
Wait, hold on just a second. I got to flip the tape, okay? Hold on just a second, okay? Okay.
I am very careful when I line up my photo shoots after a competition. When I'm being shot for the magazine, I'm very careful to perform all of the exercises that I normally do. If they want something flashier, I'll shoot it. But I will also shoot all of the basic exercises that I do. I'm adamant about that because I think that I owe it to my fans to do and demonstrate the exact exercises that I do in my routines. And I get this all the time. Whenever I do a seminar, they'll come up to me afterwards and they'll say, "Hey, you said exactly the same thing you said in your articles. What gives?" And I ask them, "Well, what did you expect? You expect me to lie to you through all my articles?"
Yeah, right, good. Okay, here's a Barbara Walters type question. On the average, do you spend a lot of time each day just looking at yourself? If you ever get bored watching TV, do you ever just sit there and watch the veins in your arms pop up and things like that?
Absolutely not. You know what, TC? I probably spend so little time looking at myself. It's just none at all.
Mm-hmm.
Just none at all. I know what I got. I probably spend a little more time, checking my look prior to a show to see how my diet's progressing. But with the exception of when I take my clothes off to jump in the shower, it's a cursory glance. I hardly ever even pose in the mirror anymore.
So the narcissism is dead, or never really existed even?
I've never really had that much, to be honest with you. To me, it's a vehicle for competing. It's a work of art that I'm working on, but I'm quite familiar with it after 34 years.
Okay, great. Is this true? Prior to the 1993 Arnold Classic, okay, did Medtronic fax you a copy of a check for $70,000 as an incentive for you to win?
Yeah. Did Bill Phillips tell you that?
I heard that, yeah.
That son of a bitch. I'll tell you what, I'll never forget this. About 2 weeks before the show, he faxes me a copy of the check, which, incidentally, I guess since you brought it up, it's okay for me to mention the fact that Metrics basically matches my money on the Arnold Classic and on the Mr. Olympia. They'll match my money for the top three places. So that's definitely an incentive, a financial incentive to work harder. But I'll never forget salivating when that check came through.
Did you try to cash it? The fax? Was that? Did it hurt doubly then to come in second, or?
It hurts in the pocketbook, definitely. But I'll tell you what. Flex Wheeler's no slouch. He's a great athlete, a very complete athlete, one of the most genetically gifted athletes I've ever seen in my entire life. And so it was no shame losing to him. And I go into those competitions to win. In other words, on a personal basis, it's an emotional thing. I'd be competing if there wasn't any money in it. The money doesn't hurt, but I don't go into a competition saying to myself, "Okay, $100,000, $100,000." If that was my sole motivation, I'd be doing something else. There's easier ways to make money.
Okay. What's the best contest to compete in? Which do you have most fun in?
I honestly have fun competing in all of the contests. Okay, there's not really. I should say that the contest that's the most fun to compete in is the one that I win.
Yeah, I got you.
But I have fun competing in all the contests. Getting ready for a contest is not always fun. That is a hell of a lot of work, and it's a hell of a lot of sacrifice. But the actual day of the show, that's fun, man.
Okay, good. A lot of bodybuilders tell me that they want to follow in Arnold's footsteps.
Right.
I've never heard you say that. Are you one of the guys who's together enough not to be jealous of Arnold?
No, I've never really been envious or jealous of Arnold. I know Arnold. I've had dinner with Arnold. I think Arnold's a great guy. Arnold's a human being just like I am. Arnold is unique in all the world just as I am unique in all the world, just as every person that's listening to this is unique in all the world. In other words, there's no two people that are exactly alike. I've come to accept, what my God-given gifts are. Everybody has different talents and such. I don't want to be anybody else. I just want to be Lee Labrada, and I want to be the best Lee Labrada I can be.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to these young guys who are just starting out and say, "I want to follow in Arnold's footsteps"?
Well, that's okay. I think that's important to have, people to look up to, role models and that type of thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think, however, that the problem arises that if you fall short of your goal, or if you're constantly measuring yourself against somebody else, that can be damaging to your self-image, But, as long as you realize, hey, this person accomplished this, and I'm going to strive to be the best that I can be along the same directions, that's okay.
Okay. Are bodybuilders good role models for kids?
Yes and no. TC, to be perfectly honest with you, yes and no. There are some that are very good role models for kids. There are many that don't know the first thing about living. There are many that are very selfish. They can't see past their next meal and their next workout. Are narcissistic and so forth and so on, but I like to think, I think that there's a lot of good people out there, and I do know of a lot of athletes that do give selflessly of their time and, try to set an example for kids and such.
Okay, great. Let me conclude on another Barbara Walters question. Give me one word that describes yourself.
Well, I'm going to tell you the first thing that popped in my head,
okay,
rather than try to come up with something else. Ambitious.
Okay.
That's the first word that popped in my head. And that's what I am. I'm ambitious, and I'm ambitious in the sense that I want to be the best that I can be. I'm on Earth here for a limited amount of time. I'm going to be the best person that I can be. I'm going to try to leave this place a little bit better than I found it. I'm going to try to leave my mark. I'm going to try to teach my kids right from wrong. Try to live my life the best that I can.
Hey, that's great. That sounds good. Thank you very much, Lee, and that concludes
Thanks
this
a lot. I
one.
really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, Guy.
And, if any of the listeners out there, care to reach me, you can give them the information.
Great.
And hey, train hard, believe in yourself, and we'll see you at the top.
Okay, and we'll see you at the cruise.
All right.
Okay, Guy.
Take care.
Bye-bye.